Here we are, another Lombardi Live, and this is a really special one, as I often say, but for several reasons, actually. My guest is Nick DiVirgilio.
Hello.
5 syllables in your last name, correct?
It's a long one, for sure.
We figured that out, and there's a reason why I'm bringing that up, and you're going to find out about it a little bit later.
Yeah.
Nick just did a fantastic series of lessons for us here. Tell us a little bit about what you just did.
Well, I did a lesson series on drumming and singing. I've had a long career of being a singing drummer. It's helped me get a lot of gigs throughout my career. And when you asked me to come and be a part of this great drum channel that you built, I wanted to do something that I haven't seen be talked about or taught much online. There's a lot of great teachers and drummers out there that teach so many great things, but this is one subject that it's only been talked about a little bit. And there's a lot of great singing drummers out there. It's always been going on. It's more popular now. There's a lot of drummers doing it, and I just think it's something that needed to be talked about a little bit more to help drummers get more work, really. I hope that helps them to find more gigs.
You know, what I thought was unique is it actually is a syllabus of lessons, things that you could practice to do. I think a lot of singing drummers learn a song and they're drummers, so they play and then they learn kind of the school of hard knocks, if you will.
I played drums every day for years, and I got to a pretty good level. But once I started getting into Dave Garibaldi was my first drum teacher.
I was just going to say at Dick Grove Music,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I remember those days.
So I was like, wow, what a great first teacher. And then I really got into it, especially at Dick Grove. Once I realized, I went in with the drum program. And then once I realized that there's all these other great classes to take in singing and songwriting and stuff, boy, it really just opened up a whole world. And learning proper technique as a singer is equally as important as learning proper technique as a drummer. It just helps a lot to make your life easier. Learning how to use your voice and your breathing and your, the tools to make singing easier. It shouldn't be really hard to sing. Some notes, some songs you go for it and you push and you get to that edge, but not all the time. You wouldn't be able to last. So to be a really good, long-lasting singer, technique is a big deal.
At the end of his course, you're going to hear some songs that are hard to sing, by the way.
You bet, yeah, for sure.
You took it to the next level.
Yeah, I figured I'd bring out the hard ones.
And learning to play drums. Your career is so interesting. You're going to find something out that I think we talk a lot about here on Drum Channel, which is somebody pursuing their passion and how your passion can take you in several different directions in your career. Because this is a gentleman that has a unique day gig, which we'll talk about, that has everything to do with exactly what he wants to do with his passion, which is playing drums. Yeah. People get hired to play drums in bands, and you got hired to play drums in a little different situation. But before we find out about that, in your normal playing career, before you got to your experience at Sweetwater, where you're working now, what was one of the first band experiences you had? And did you have to audition to get into it? And how did you prepare for that? That's something that's really important for kids to know.
Well, so many things in my career happened because of who I knew. And the networking and the schmoozing and going out to clubs and just meeting people. That was such a huge part of my career. Early on, it really started for me with my first original band, Spock's Beard. I guess before that, I played in cover bands and stuff around town and hustled gigs like pretty much everybody in this city who's a musician. And Spock's Beard, I went and I sat in at the Universal Bar and Grill, which I don't know if that's there anymore on Lancashire anymore, down here in Studio City. And it was a blues jam, and I met Neil and Alan Morris, and Neil was the singer and main songwriter of the band Spock's Beard. And we became friends, and he asked me to join the band. And that was the beginning of things sort of opening up for me. And then I subbed for a guy at a local ski resort up at Mountain High for a gig with a band. I forget the name of the company. I wish I remember, because these guys, my career broke at this point. The guys that put the gig on wired up, built the patch bays and stuff for all the big studios in town, from Ocean Way and all these things. And then the side gig, they play blues gigs on the weekend just to kind of get away from soldering and all kinds of stuff that they did. Well, at that gig, they invited up a bunch of these stars that they had worked with, and a gentleman by the name of Kevin Gilbert showed up. And Kevin Gilbert, these are the only guys that showed up that they invited, was Kevin Gilbert and Sheryl Crow. And this was before Sheryl Crow was famous singer that she became. Long story short, from meeting Kevin at that gig, he asked me to do a tribute gig for an old Genesis record at a thing called Prog Fest that was in LA back in 1995. And from that, he asked me to join his band And that broke my career because from that, I went from being just a local guy trying to find gigs to all of a sudden being in a world that was a lot more record makers, producers, much people at a much higher level. And boy, that opened up everything. That's how I got the Tears for Fears gig. That's how I ended up getting to record with Genesis and all that kind of stuff from meeting that one person. So it really was a who you know sort of thing for me. I did have to audition for the Genesis recording for sure. And but the Tears for Fears gig, I got sight unseen. A drummer in town by the name of Brian McLeod. And he did all the Sheryl Crow stuff and a ton of other stuff.
Oh, Brian, yeah.
He's one of my favorite drummers ever. Such a groovy guy and a super nice guy. We had started a band with Kevin, myself, and Brian called Caviar. And we were making some interesting music. The Tears for Fears tour was about to start. Brian decided he didn't want to do the tour because he had recorded this record called Raoul and the Kings of Spain. So he told Roland Orzabal, I got a guy who's better than me, which I don't think I am, and you should use him. His name's Nick. And Roland said, okay. I sent them some music that I played on and stuff. That's how I got the gig. So things happened for me in my career in a very weird way in those kinds of respect. In that respect, I should say. Fast forward, I got recommended for my band, Big Big Train, and I started recording for them. That's how I joined that band. But then when I got, I'm skipping over a lot of things, but when I got the Cirque Du Soleil gig, I went through a long audition process online, sending in tracks, making a video of myself playing.
It's a hard gig.
Yeah, sending in my bio of everything I'd done up to that point. So that was, out of all the gigs I've done, that was probably the biggest audition process I had to go through.
Your preparation years, even getting before Dick Grove,
right.
What was your kind of practice routine? How did you study? What would you encourage young drummers to do?
I was, like I told you, I was self-taught growing up. I basically just listened to records. I don't know. God gave me the gift of being able to play drums at an early age. I don't know how. I have no drummers in my family, other musicians, but no drummers. And I did the typical hitting pots and pans. My father bought me a drum kit, and I just started listening to, I was listening to the Osmonds when I was a young kid, but my brother turned me on to Led Zeppelin, and I'd put on the record and just play along until I figured it out. I didn't really start really studying drums until I was in Dick Grove aside, but like I study drums more now than I did when I was a kid. I mean, I'm really into it. I love all the technical stuff and the way players have taken drumming to such a level now with technique and what you can do on a drum kit. I couldn't really think of doing back then. So I really enjoy it now. But as a kid, I just played in my back bedroom next to my parents' bedroom. My dad would turn the TV up to like 40 so he could hear the Dodger game or whatever, and I would just play all day long.
Tears for Fears you were with?
Tears for Fears I was with for 15 years,
15 years.
I was with Tears for Fears from 1995 until 2010. And in those years, we didn't tour a lot. There were some years we didn't tour much at all, depending on what they were doing and stuff. So, but the beginning, we toured a ton. And I got to, I was all of a sudden going from not much to the big pop gigs, playing at all these huge arenas and stuff. And it was, what a fantastic experience it was, you bet. And just all those years playing and preparing for the opportunity helped big time.
Was singing always an integral part of getting you from one stage to the next stage? And did that help you as you went through these various bands, the fact that you had the ability and you could sing?
Yep. It was a huge part. I mean, it helped me get gigs. I started playing gigs live around 17 years old, like in clubs and stuff like that. And being able to sing songs and sing background parts and hear the pitches and that kind of stuff. And my voice was always, I had a higher range, so I could sing the higher notes in the ensemble a lot of the time. That helped, and I would get recommended for other cover gigs, and so I was making money as a player from 17 and onward. I never really had many other jobs other than being a musician, except for the lean times, and singing was a huge help.
Something that easily I think every drummer could add into their vocabulary, I guess, no pun intended there, but something that you could say you do a lot. I play drums, I also sing. Obviously, if you could take it beyond that and get more experience with other instruments, such as you play.
Yeah, well, I grew up playing, my brother played guitar, so I played a lot of guitar as a kid and kind of taught myself piano. And all of those things are huge helps because to learn the melodic side of music, as opposed to just the rhythmic side, is a huge help because you learn about songs and melody and structure of the melodic side of things. And it just trains your brain and your ear to hear those things as well, on top of the rhythms that you're playing. And it's just great training. And to know how songs work is a great thing too. And you can train yourself to hear the bridge coming or know when the chorus is coming. And so in a lot of songs, especially pop songs and simpler tunes, the way they're structured is similar a lot of times. So you can kind of anticipate things the more you get it ingrained in your head and you get trained with that kind of stuff. So it's a huge help, and it's helped me become a songwriter and and prepare for all kinds of things, learning another instrument. I think I recommend that to any drummer, even if you don't want to take it to some other level, just for fun. It's great to learn what those instruments are about and to hear those notes and learn what's going on.
And from the business side, I'll encourage you out there, as years go by, and years do go by the way, I can attest to that.
You bet.
Those royalties you get as a songwriter are really nice to have.
Sure. If you can get some songwriting credits out there, you bet. Mailbox money is a good thing.
And so you have a career going as a great player, people knowing about you, as I did back in the day as you were a player. And then all of a sudden, where did you go? Nick moved out of L.A.
Well, yeah, life brings you to all kinds of curveballs. You never know what's going to happen. So I'll just take a little quick step back. I was doing the Tears for Fears thing, but it was really slowing down at the end. 2009 or so, there wasn't much going on. They were just gigging a couple of weeks a year, so I wasn't paying the bills. The gigs were always fun, but it wasn't really making me a good living anymore because they were just slowing down. And I just decided out of the blue to audition for Cirque du Soleil because I'd seen a bunch of shows and the music was always interesting. I'd only seen the Vegas shows. I go, what the heck? I went on their website and they have a whole audition process. So I decided to go for it. So I auditioned as a singer and a drummer. I did a whole vocal audition too and sang in their kind of weird language and wrote out the words on.
As a singing drummer or two different
I did both
gigs?
I did both. Well,
Okay.
I guess I should say I did three things. I auditioned as a drummer and as a singer and then as a singing drummer. So, and really I lucked out. I mean, I guess all the preparation helped, but gosh, it took about 6 months to get a call back because, they get a lot of auditions in their process. And I finally got a call from a guy. They were planning a brand new show called Totem. And he goes, we'd like to offer you this gig. Now, usually if you audition for Cirque, you got to go through 2, 3, 4 auditions to get a gig. I don't know why I got offered the gig so quickly, but the composers of the show, 2 guys up in Montreal, one of the composers is a drummer and liked the way I played and knew some of the stuff that I worked in. They liked Tears for Fears and all that kind of stuff. So that cachet of that name helped. They offered me the job. I go, wow, what's it entail? Well, you got to come on the road with us. But you could bring your whole family. We'll school your kids and you will have apartments and we'll put you up in each city and all this kind of stuff. And it took us a good 4 or 5 weeks to actually make the decision because we had to pull our kids out of school and put our stuff in storage and go join the circus. And
not a bad choice for the kids, I think. Right?
Totally. And the kids were young. The kids were 8 and 10 and 12, around that age range when we first started. And we decided to go for it. And good steady money, all the benefits, everything that came with it, and nothing else was going on in my career at that time. So it's like, let's try it for. I think they offered me a 2-year contract. So we think we'll do a couple of years, and if it's not working, we'll come home. Well, I ended up staying for 5 years.
And when you hear the name circus, what might pop up in your mind is like the local
animals,
circus comes
right.
over to the park
like
and they set up one day and then they go away to. This is a major Vegas show that happens to be on the road.
You bet.
How many employees did they have?
We traveled with over about 164 people, I think, was on the road with us. And that's everything from the people that sell the tickets to the cooks in our cafeteria to all the acrobats and the athletes and the crew and the stage builders and the lighting, everybody. We had people from 19 different countries, spoke a bunch of different languages. My kids went to school. There was 11 kids in school and 4 teachers. Kids from first grade up through high school, speaking all these different languages.
Teachers traveling with the circus.
With the circus, yeah. So it was an amazing experience. Crazy little story. It was funny because born and raised in Southern California, hot weather all the time, right? We had to move to Montreal, Canada on January 19th. And my kids had seen the snow up in the mountains at Mount Baldy a few times. They'd never seen this kind of thing. So we moved to a frozen wasteland. It was like they kind of had no idea what to expect. And we moved in from our house into this little apartment in Montreal, and we lived there for 6 months because we had to prepare the show and rehearse and get it all. We rehearsed for 12 weeks before we even started the show. And then the show started in Montreal. Once we got used to it, it just became this, we were a big traveling family. We went over to Amsterdam and to London. So my kids were all of a sudden seeing the world and then getting the culture of all these people we were traveling with.
These are not one-nighters.
These are not, we were in each town about 3 months in each city. Yeah. You know, so what an experience. It was crazy cool. And then on top of it, all those years that I had built up my relationships in the UK with Tears for Fears and my buddies, Spock's Beard, we had toured a bunch over there. Whenever I was over there, I would go do a bunch of sessions in my buddy's studio in the UK, and that's how I joined my band, Big Big Train. So a lot of these things were sort of like self-fulfilling prophecies, just kind of building and snowballing into this whole thing.
And taking it to the next step, you're in the circus.
Right.
Is that when you get the call to take your career into even another step?
Well, what happened there is that there was a bunch of corporate cutbacks. After about 4 or 5 years, Cirque was making some cutbacks in the company's bottom line. And one of the huge things was closing the school, that benefit for the employees.
The teachers that would travel with you.
Right. There was about 6 shows like mine that would be traveling around the world, literally all over the world, 3 months at a time in a city, and they had schools. Because there was kids from, we had kids from all over the world. My kids went to school with kids from Russia and France and Belarus and Mongolia.
I
and
mean,
all kinds
most
of stuff.
tours, rock bands go on tour. I've never heard of them bringing the family and the kids.
Not like this. Yeah. And that was a huge thing. That's why they got these people from all over the world, these amazing acrobats and athletes from every corner of the globe, because they were able to bring their family. I mean, these people it was weird. You think of a job. These people's were experts at very specific things. Like the guys who would catch, it's called the Russian bar act. And it was basically pole vaults that they would tie 3 pole vault bars together to make a bar. And you'd have these huge guys from Russia and like Eastern Europe. They were big as football players. They put these poles on their shoulder, and one of the smaller acrobats would bounce on these bars. And you have guys on either side, and they would bounce on the bar and do like triple backflips, and they would land. It's about this wide, and the guys would catch them. So their specific expertise was catching the guy falling out of the sky on this little bar.
That was his gig.
That was his gig, and they took it very seriously.
I would hope they did too.
Cirque was a place for people to do, odd things for a living, and this is where they would make their living. So to be able to travel with their family and make great money, and to do this thing that you're trained for, is totally unique place in the world. And
you have to. You have the show written out.
Oh yeah,
it's you're reading a chart pretty much.
No. Well, we learned this. No, we memorized the music. At the beginning, we read charts and stuff, and you're playing the music to the act that's on stage. Now, they never do it the same twice because they're doing these really difficult things. So we have to follow them, even though we're locked to computers and stuff. We worked in this program called Ableton Live, and we were able to manipulate the computer program to follow us. And in case someone dropped something and they'd do a trick again. So the music followed the act on stage. It was an incredible learning experience. But when they closed the school, it was like we had done it for 5 years. I did 1,426 shows by that time. Never missed a gig, and that doesn't include any rehearsals or dress rehearsals. That's just the paid attendance gigs. So I probably did it 2,000 times. And we just decided, okay, let's go back home. I could have kept my job. They didn't fire me, but I would have had to figure out how to homeschool the kids from overseas, and it just wouldn't have been a lot harder. And my son wasn't totally in love with the touring lifestyle. My daughter loved it. My son, not so much. So let's go back home and give you guys a normal life, go back to high school and go back to your friends and stuff. And I was calling around and said, listen, my Cirque gig is ending. I need to find some work. What do you got going on? And I got offered 2 gigs. My buddy, Mark Hornsby, great engineer, was at Sweetwater. Chuck had hired, Chuck Sirac is the owner. And there's recording studios at Sweetwater. And they were always just stuff that they did regionally. And Chuck wanted to build the studios up into a much more, not more than regional. Like you want to get people there from all over the world to come and record because it's a world-class facility. It really is really nice. So he hired Mark to build something there. And Mark's idea was to build a team of players, musicians, sort of Muscle Shoals kind of thing, in-house talent. So anybody could come in, a songwriter, they don't have a band, we'll help you write your song, we'll play the parts, we'll make you a really professional, polished product, whether you're an amateur or professional. And So I got offered that gig, thankfully.
Some people, especially non-musicians watching, might not know what Sweetwater is. Quick explanation.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yeah. Sweetwater is the biggest online music retailer in the country. So we sell gear, right? We sell everything from microphones to guitar strings to drums to pro audio gear and everything. And they're the biggest. T-shirts, of course, the whole 9 yards. And they just built into this behemoth of a place.
They had a recording studio as part of their business.
Right. Chuck started the company as a mobile recording studio in a VW bus. That's how he started Sweetwater. He would go around to local churches or anybody that wanted to record something. He had a mobile rig in his VW. He would record it, go home that night, mix the audio, deliver the cassette or whatever it was to the client the next day with a few pieces of candy, and that was his thing. Then a couple of years later, I think he started selling Shure microphones, and then Kurzweil, the keyboard company, he started making samples for Kurzweil and started selling them, and those were like his first couple of products. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. And from that, he had this gift of being able to sell and just got another product and just slowly built it into the thing. Now we have 2,600 employees and a 500,000 square foot warehouse, and it's like the Google of the Midwest. I mean, he turned it into a massive operation. But the recording studio was always a special part of his business because he started as a recording facility. So in his studio, as great as it wasn't making a ton of money and stuff, so he wanted to grow it, and that's when Mark came in. And I got offered to come there to be the drummer.
And that's where?
In Fort Wayne, Indiana. So again, moving from Southern California to the Midwest, a whole other life culture change. It's a cool little town for sure. But it was offered that or going on the road. I got offered to do a pretty good rock gig that I really wanted to take, but the kids, I would have been like old style. I'd be gone for 6 months, not see the family. The kids were kind of in early high school years and stuff, so I didn't want to leave them. So it was good. We decided to move to Fort Wayne and take this job. I've been there for 7 years now. Half my job is in-house drummer and singer and stuff in the recording studios, and then I do the web content where I do demo videos and everything drum related.
And your band is?
Big Big Train.
The Big Big Train. That's currently your band.
Right.
And people can find those CDs and product?
Of course, yeah. Lots of stuff. We just released our latest record on July 30th called Common Ground. You go to bigbigtrain.com. You can see our whole catalog there and buy everything. Spotify, everywhere music is listened to and sold and stuff, you can get it. And there's tons of videos and live stuff on the web and all over YouTube.
And tell us a little bit about Invisible.
So on the record, there's a different drum kit on every song. And we went through this whole process. We made a video of every song of why I chose the sound of the kit for that particular tune and why we mic'd it a certain way. And we chose what cymbals I used and the heads and how I tuned the drums and made this whole process of why I picked that. So we molded the drum sound to the particular tune. As a drummer, most of the time you go into a session, you bring your drum kit, a variety of cymbals, 3, 4, 5 snares, because snares change a lot of times in record making, but the toms and kick drum don't normally change. This way, we got into the weeds and stuff, but it was such a cool creative process to mold the sound to a particular style of song. And it was a lot of work, but super interesting to learn about how the different manufacturers make their drums, their philosophy behind their drums, just like you guys have here at DW, why you do what you do. It's very interesting that things I didn't know of before this process and before working at Sweetwater. Same with cymbals and heads. And we even had different sticks and different tips and why I chose that to get more ping on the cymbal, this kind of stuff. So it's a really cool project. And I got to go to Abbey Road to record strings and brass because DPA was a big sponsor of the record, the microphone company. So many special things that I would never have been able to do without being at Sweetwater.
Kind of an analog sound library. I love it.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Where can people see that and experience it?
All the videos are all on Sweetwater's YouTube channel. Every video, the making of the record, every drum kit explanation. There's a video for every song.
I can't let you just say in passing, and I went to Abbey Road and we did this and we did that. Every drummer's dream would be to go do something. What was that like? I mean, just to channel what was happening there.
It was amazing. So you walk into that building, the history alone, first you walk in and you just kind of get this, whoa, all the music that was made there. And especially if you're a Beatles fan, it's just, so we recorded in Studio 2, the Beatles room. They've redone the control room, which is upstairs, and you look down into the studio, but the main tracking room, they haven't changed it since the 60s.
And I'm sure they better not.
No, exactly. Just the vibe. They used to smoke in there, right? So there's the way the white paint is sort of, it's not so white anymore. The same baffles are there. The old piano that has cigarette burns on it that John Lennon sang, all those songs. Just it's an amazing experience. You kind of get that aura thing as you walk in there, and then to hear these amazing musicians from the London Philharmonic and the London orchestral scene in that room, it was just mind-blowing and beautiful, and it was so much fun. And they're playing my music. It's like, whoa, how did this even happen? It was an awesome experience.
And well-deserved, I will say.
Well, thank you.
You can be the first to find out, because we haven't found out yet, the exact title of your course on singing.
Just wanted to show from basic setup to like how you should sit there. Every drummer sits differently. I wanted to talk from the very basics of how to sit and breathe to gear. What kind of gear is best? The hard thing for drummers when you're singing is how it sounds to the people out front. Drums are loud instruments. They bleed through the microphone. It's tough to keep that all together. So there's ways to kind of alleviate those things and make it better. And
one of the examples he gave, and I gave him a little tip on it,
right.
And this is why I talked about this at the beginning, is Di Virgilio. Why did I say that? What does that actually sound like?
Right. Well, we were talking about using odd syllabled words like 3, 5, 7, that kind of stuff, while playing a straight beat. And
there's an independence involved there.
Sure. So there's a few other drummers out there in the world that have used the word university, which is a 5-syllable word. Just easy to say. You want to pick words that kind of roll off the tongue easier than some kind of one with a lot of consonants in it and stuff like that. So you pick an easier word. And Di Virgilio was actually not that hard to say. But you play a straight beat and you sing a 5-syllable word over just a regular 4/4 groove. And so it's really 6-way independence. You have your 4 limbs. You also have the rhythm of the 5 syllables you're singing. And you have to think about, you're singing a note, so you have to think about the pitch as well. So you have 6 things going on. And then I did one where I was going through all the vowel sounds in succession and then repeating it. So that's even like a 7th thing. So if you have to think about remembering lyrics and rhythm and pitch in your voice, plus your 4 limbs, you have 7 things going on at the same time. And the brain's an amazing thing. You can really do all of it. And the key is to practice these, at least what I hope I taught in this course, is that if you practice these things, it gets easier as you do it. Especially when you play harder music, the goal is to kind of internalize the parts so you don't have to think of what you're playing all the time. You just feel it. It flows out of you. Same with the vocals.
And you don't even have to be behind a drum set probably to practice this.
No. In fact, it's probably a good idea to work on your breathing exercises and stuff away from the kit. And then when you sit down, you can take those practices to the drum studio.
I suckered you into this. So now that you don't have to be behind a drum set to practice this, let me hear a little Di Virgilio, what it sounded like when you were doing a rock beat and singing that.
Well, okay, so if you think about it, so if you pick a 5-syllable word, it takes 5 bars to get right back around to 1 again, to where the word starts over. And so that's where the playing in 4/4 comes into being here. So what you need to practice, and what's hard, is that you're hearing the 2 and 4. What I do is I listen for the 2 and 4 on my snare drum. And while you're playing, the 1 sometimes will sound like beat 3. So it's hard. You got to you have to count the 5 bars, say the 5-syllable word, sing in key, and keep time at the same time. So I'll play it on the arm of the couch here. 2, 3, 4. Di Virgilio, 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 Di. The hardest part is to realize how many bars you've played. It's so easy to get lost, So it's cool independence polyrhythmic independence and all that kind of stuff. It's really teaching your brain to hear while it's doing other things at the same time.
So if you're a drummer, singer, songwriter, you might want to be sure to look up a bunch of words that have 4 syllables in them.
Oh yeah, I mean, take it to an extreme. There's 6, 7, 8 syllable words, and see if you can play along and get back around to the beginning of the phrase.
I thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing your experience. And anything you'd like to say in closing to the kids that are watching?
Just have fun. Music is such a beautiful thing. Practice. Make sure when you practice music, just make sure it's fun. Practice is a great thing, and it all builds. And just have fun. Music is a gift, and if you can learn, there's so many great players out there. I love your platform that you've built, because the amount of amazing musicians you have come through this facility and the things that they teach, it's just so invaluable this day and age. When I was a kid, you didn't have the instant access to such great education that you do now. And it's amazing to watch all the classic guys to new players. And I just love what you've built here, and just have fun with it. That's the best thing, Learn as much as you can, because there's so much out there to sink in.
Nick, thank you so much for showing us your talent and sharing your story with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And you join us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Drum Channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don.
Really appreciate it.
Really appreciate having me here. Thank you.
You too. And we'll see you next time, next Tuesday at 5 on Lombardi Live.